So now we have a very special treat. Deborah Gilboa, also known as Dr. G. She's a family physician and a youth development expert. You may have seen her on the Today Show and Good Morning America if you're not at work during that time. Or maybe you TiVo it and you do it when you get home. So she does those shows. She does a lot of other great work. She shares her passion for raising kids with character. Dr. G teaches us how to shift our roles as parents and educators to step back so kids can step up. Please help me welcome Dr. G.
Thank you. Welcome. Oh, thanks. Chores are the canary in the coal mine of kids' character. Picture this. I'm standing in an auditorium in Northern California, the wealthiest public school district in the entire state. And I say to them, hey, how many of you had chores when you were kids? How many of you guys had chores when you were kids? Me too. And I say, you know, I'm talking about chores that are meaningful, contribute to the whole family, not just pick up your clothes, toss them in a hamper. And everybody in this room raises their hand, 1,500 people, and I say, great. Now, think about the kids living in your home. This event was for parents of high schoolers. How many of them have chores that are somewhat like the level of frequency and difficulty of the chores that you did when you were their age? 4 people raised their hands. And I think they were administrators because they're all standing on the sides. When I travel the country and I ask parents, why don't you ask your kids to do chores? They tell me, what do you think they tell me? Too busy. Closest without going over. Too busy. There's no time. They say, listen, my kids have to do their homework, and I have to get them to their program, or we don't all get home until 7 o'clock at night, and I don't want to spend the 45 minutes that I have with my kids arguing with them about the chores that they've got to get done, especially when it would be so much what to do it myself? Easier, faster, get done the way I want it to get done, often the first time. Why am I talking to a group of after-school youth development professionals about home chores? I'll tell you why. We have a myth in this country. A myth that a small percentage of kids are capable of truly amazing us, of becoming an Olympic athlete, of being invited to the White House, of starting a nonprofit, raising $1 million. We have an equally held cultural belief that 97% of kids aren't capable of studying for a math test and taking out the garbage. That it's the really, truly exceptional kids that can rise up and do astounding things, but that most kids really need a ton of support. And when we ask them to do other things, things that aren't focused on academic success, things that aren't focused on doing the best they can on their team or making a scholarship, things that aren't focused on getting really good at something, some achievement that will separate them from the crowd, that we are failing them and that they will be doomed. Doomed. This is a belief that our whole society has in achievement over character. But as we raise our standards for children's achievement, we hurt kids. If my goal for my 4 sons, I have 4 sons. Usually I get a, aw, thank you, that's somebody else has 4 sons, woohoo. If my goal for any of my 4 sons is that he really distinguish himself through achievement, then That's what he's going to focus on. This happened. One of my sons was saying he really wanted to try and get accepted to the science and technology magnet high school in our city. We live in Pittsburgh. And we said, dude, you tanked science fair last year. Like, you didn't even try. If you want us to help you with the work and the transportation issues and all that it would take for you to apply to and get accepted to that school, you're going to have to bring it. You got to show us that you really mean this, that it isn't some whim or you heard that they get to use computers all day or whatever that would make a 12-year-old say, oh yeah, I want to go to that place. So you got to really show us. This year you got to commit yourself to your science fair project. And he said, okay, I get it. And he really did. He picked a partner who cared about their project. He picked a topic that interested him and adults would care about too, texting and driving. They chose 40 subjects, beating his personal best of 4 from the previous year. They made a really nice board on their own, even walked down to the store and bought the trifold board. Really, I had to do absolutely nothing. I wouldn't have done anything, so that worked out well for him. And they brought it to science fair at their school, and they got 2nd place for their grade. That's a big deal. Unfortunately, he also joined in when the student who'd won 1st place took the ribbon off his own board, walked over to the kid who did the lousiest job, put the ribbon on that board, took a picture, and sent it around the whole grade as a mean-spirited joke. My son gets home, and I say to him, this is completely unacceptable. And he's shocked, genuinely shocked. He says to me, but you told me I had to try really hard and do a really good job, and I did. I came in 2nd place. And I said to him, if I gave you the impression that your achievement was more important than your integrity, I genuinely apologize. And you're grounded. Go to your room. Think about what you can do to make this right. I forgot to explicitly say who you are is even more important to me than what you do. The man that you are becoming matters even more to me than your science fair project. At every minute of every day. Eric stood here and he said, please just don't tell your young staff, we want you to engage kids. We want you to make it a joyful experience. Give them the tools to do it. Explain what you do want them to say. Give them some autonomy and some flexibility, but help your staff understand you could do this. And I had forgotten to do that. If I had thought twice, I would have realized that science fair in 7th grade is a place ripe for poor social behavior. And he'd never been to science fair before. They have a lot of time on their hands while they're waiting for people to walk around and judge their projects or ask them questions. They socialize a lot. That's one of the times that 7th graders are at their worst for a whole bunch of important chemical reasons, but they are. And I never said to him, hey, make sure that your behavior at science fair is even better than your science fair board. I'm not going to remember to tell my kids every time that I need great behavior from them. But I did remember to say, science fair is coming up, I want you to work hard on your project. I got sucked into the achievement part. I don't think I'm wrong that committing himself to a science fair project was a great way to show us that he really cared about science and that it was worth family effort towards trying to get him into a magnet school, which, by the way, he stopped being interested in about 3 months later. But I have to talk to my kids about character because our kids are facing all kinds of stressors and pressures. But as a society, we're using that as an excuse to not worry about their character. We're saying they're under so much stress and they face so many pressures that we can't layer on something extra. If my grandfather of blessed memory were here, he would say, how can respect and a good work ethic and the ability to handle it when things don't go well be considered extras. Isn't that just the price of doing business? Isn't that the first thing that adults should be teaching children, is how to get along in the world? And if there's time, helping them with new math. There are all kinds of changes going on in a kid's brain. You guys all know this, but just as a reminder, brains really finish their major remodeling. They remodel all our lives, but finish their major remodeling at about what age? 24 for women, 26 for guys, on average. There's always one woman in the crowd who's like, I don't know, but it doesn't happen by 45, I'll tell you that. And I'm not disagreeing in general, but there's a lot of change going on. Anybody ever taken care of a toddler who's going through a growth spurt and they just lose their minds at any given moment? That's because so much internal change is happening. And they're trying to integrate what they're starting to understand they ought to be able to do in the world versus what they can actually accomplish by using their words or their fists or whatever. Psychologists call the next huge change, which is somewhere between 8 and 9 years old to somewhere between 14 and 16 years old, they nicely call it recentering. Isn't that a sweet way to say they get all self-involved again and stop paying attention to how anybody else feels? When we give students achievement pressures about grades, which, by the way, they can't control. When we give students achievement pressures about sports, about any other way in which they could distinguish themselves while they're still in elementary or junior or high school, we create stress changes in their brains that are even worse than the stress changes adults feel. And we all know that there are a lot of physical and psychological damage done by stress, right? Blood sugar changes, cortisol level, which is the fight or flight chemical, causes all kinds of unpleasant changes, can cause everything from liver and muscle damage to changes in the chemicals in our brain and worsen mental health struggles, can trigger mental health struggles. It's even worse for kids. All those things we worry about adults facing stress, and it leads to obesity and diabetes and heart attacks and strokes, and I could give you a list and not stop for a minute. Those changes are even more pronounced in children. Think about it like any other chemical that we think about. We know caffeine isn't great for adults, it's worse for kids. Alcohol isn't great for adults, worse for kids. Tobacco and nicotine aren't great for adults, worse for kids. Stress, not great for adults, even worse for kids. So our society has decided to, that makes it sound too intentional, has gotten to a position where we up the stress chemicals, and at the same time, we are robbing kids of the tools they need and the time they need to reduce their own stress. This is more true in school than it is in after-school programs, or camps, which is where I also do a lot of my work. Here, at least, we often have a space set aside for physical activity and a schedule that allows kids to go and get some of that physical activity. We often have the flexibility in our structure and in our own minds as educators and as professionals to say, this schedule isn't working for you, we might be able to change it. Some kids come straight from school and it will reduce their stress chemicals to get started on their homework and get it done, right? They just want to know it's out of the way so that they can go on to doing what they choose. Some kids, a lot of kids, have given it their all to hold it together during the school day, and by the time they get to your after-school program, they are losing their minds. And if the first thing they have to do is sit down and behave like they had to behave all day, you're going to get the worst of them. They didn't get a chance to burn off that cortisol. I want you to feel what cortisol feels like. So imagine this, please. You're standing at the edge of a curb, holding the hand of a 3-year-old you really like. You're waiting for the light to change. It does. You look both ways. Looks fine. You start to step off the curb. I'm not going to. You start to step off the curb, and you notice a flash of color. It's going too fast in the wrong direction, and you grab that child up, and you step back up onto that curb, and your heart is pounding, and your breathing is coming too quickly, and your vision might even be graying, and you're okay, you're okay. Probably the 3-year-old is pushing you away. I know, what's wrong with you? But that feeling that you have inside of that heart-pounding terror as that car goes flying by, you feel the wind from it. That's cortisol. That saves our lives. Cortisol shuts down all reasoning. It lights up your reflexes. It makes your heart beat faster. It makes you a little stronger. You're probably not lifting a car, but it makes you a little stronger. It makes you better at saving your life in that moment. Super important that it shuts down your ability to reason, because if you had to think, that could be a car going in the wrong direction, we could pancake. Too late to jump back up onto the curb. And your brain knows that, so it shuts down everything except reflex. The problem is, our brain doesn't differentiate between truly life-threatening stress and stress. Cortisol is the chemical it uses. You've also had probably that same feeling of heart pounding and freaking out when you face conflict, when you face unexpected criticism, when you have to deal with someone with whom you've had difficult interactions, when you feel unfairly accused of something. Those are hard things for an adult to go through. There are things that kids experience all the time, several times every day, especially kids who have trouble with the usual structure of school. So they've had cortisol dump after dump after dump after dump after dump. And they come to you, this combination of incredibly edgy and exhausted. So they're looking for some compassion. Okay, that's cool, because you guys are excellent at compassion, as long as they are not putting somebody else in a life-threatening situation. Knowing this soup that kids are living in, kids in every socioeconomic strata are living with the stress of achievement, of standing out, but not in the wrong way, that adults feel because we're afraid of our kids getting lost. Lost into bad behaviors, lost into not achieving enough to have socioeconomic stability as adults, lost into making the wrong decision, lost because a lot of the parents who are sending their kids to after-school programs, they themselves haven't yet figured out the resilience piece, how to handle it when things go really badly. If you could wave a magic wand, think about a kid in one of your programs, or your home, if you prefer. This works for everyone. Think about a kid and flash forward 20 years. Imagine, please, that someone who knows you well and likes you and knows the people in your life calls you up and says, hey, how's so-and-so doing? That person, that kiddo that you're thinking about now, 20 years from now, somebody calls you, how's that kiddo doing? What words, adjectives, do you want to be able to use in 20 years to describe that child you're thinking about? Successful, kind, happy, and happy. Motivated. Healthy. Driven. Say it again. Empathetic. Accomplished. There's one over here. Passionate. Okay, so I ask audiences all the time this question, and you guys gave me the answers that I get. Do you know that nobody ever says rich? When I ask students, I work with middle and high school students and college-age students, and I ask them this question, they give me the same answers. I say 10, 15 years, how do you want someone to be able to describe you? The exact same kinds of adjectives that you gave me. Kind, empathetic, passionate, successful. Now, you can make the argument that somebody meant rich when they said successful, and we all know that being well-resourced helps. But it's not where our brains go automatically. What we end up thinking about is happiness. And there's a lot out there about happiness. A lot. As a matter of fact, if you look at the Amazon bestseller lists of parenting books, all of the books in 2015 had happy in the title, except mine. You'll find out why in a minute. So I have these 4 kids, and I want them to be happy, no question. And you will not be surprised to know that we've been asking ourselves this question of, like, what is happiness? Because look, You've never met my 8-year-old, but you know how to make him happy. Cartoon Network and a Snickers bar. For the next 22 and a half minutes, he'll be thrilled. And also, he'll think you're the best. The dictionary says that happy is a feeling of joyfulness, contentment, pleasure. But if I really want my kids to be happy, how do I teach that? Because if every time my 8-year-old is upset, I give him Cartoon Network and a Snickers bar, do you want him in your program? And I don't want him in my home. And you don't want him to be your kid's best friend, and you don't want him to be your employee, and you don't want him pushing your mom over to X-ray from the emergency room when she falls and hurts her wrist, because he'll be texting on his phone and run her into a wall. If all I'm thinking about is making my children happy now, that does not serve them or my goals. But from that list of books you saw, parents are under tremendous pressure to make our kids happy. Even educators are now under a lot of pressure to make kids happy. Raise your hand if you've ever lived with a teenager when you were not one. Lived with a teenager while you were not a teenager. Okay, about half the people. Could you make that teenager happy? On a bet you couldn't make him happy or make her happy. You actually can't make someone else happy. So do I throw up my hands and say, okay, I'm out? No. There's been a lot of research asking us, what is happiness? Really great study looking at tens of thousands of adults and asking them to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 their happiness in the last day, month, and year. Then they asked them a whole bunch of other questions, looking at only the people who gave themselves a 9 or a 10 for the last day, month, and year. They found 3 things that all those people had in common. Hang on, we'll go back to this for a second. 3 things that all those people had in common. They gave themselves very high scores for confidence. They were highly competent at something they felt mattered to the world. And they rated themselves as having excellent relationships. Okay, confidence, competence, and good relationships. Those things we can teach. This is what society says about happiness. This is an actual billboard that I did not crash my car taking this picture on the Pennsylvania Turnpike because I pulled over and backed up about 500 yards. This is the answer that our society has to a tantrum. It's on a billboard. We were driving by it another time after I'd taken the picture, but I hadn't mentioned it to my kids, and I hear from the back one of my kids goes, "Ooh, Mom's gonna be mad." They know my party line. You have a magic wand to give kids the skills that they need for happiness. That magic wand is after-school programming. You have the presence of mind to do what a lot of parents have lost the ability to do, which is to see the forest for the trees. To understand that it feels really good when kids that we love are happy in that moment, but it's even more important to give them those skills of being confident, competent, resilient people with good relationships so that they can find and make their own happiness later. It's like the fish, right? Give a person a fish or teach them to fish. I don't want to make my child happy right now. As a matter of fact, ask any of my kids, I'm the proximal cause of most of their unhappiness. I'm the person who says, no, you can't go to that party. Nope, you may not speak to him that way. You can't have the truck anymore because you hit your brother over the head with it. We put up a lot of fences and boundaries and obstacles in front of children. And we should. That's our job. My 14-year-old came to me a few weeks ago. He said, "Mom, Ian's having a party Saturday night. Can I go?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I just need the name and phone number of an adult who's going to be there I can talk to beforehand." He says, "Okay, no problem." Friday, he calls me after school. He's going to go do something with his friends. I say, "Hey, are you still going to that party at Ian's tomorrow night?" He says, "I really want to." I said, "Terrific. I still need the name and phone number of an adult who's going to be there that I can talk to." "Okay, yeah, got it." He comes home a couple hours later. He pulls me aside. He says, "Mom, I don't think there's going to be an adult there." I said, "Oh, I get that, but you can't go." He gets a little choked up and frustrated, and he says, I wasn't supposed to say anything. My friends are going to be really mad. I said, hey, buddy, I'm not telling anybody. You may not go. But you can tell your friends I made you babysit, you got grounded for not cleaning your room, you got hit by a helicopter, whatever you need to tell them. And he looks at me with a little gleam in his eye, and we're negotiating this teenage thing. He's my eldest, and he's in high school now, and he says, can I tell him you're an a-hole who won't let me go to parties? And I said, yes, that has the added advantage of being true. But I start feeling badly about it. Man, he must be really unhappy. It's awfully hard to have to text your friends and be like, I can't go to the party. So I say to him, hey, Ari, listen, tomorrow night, if you want to, I'm going to be home. You can invite all your friends here. And he says, oh, no, I don't want them here. I think they're going to do all kinds of dangerous, illegal stuff. And I say, well, then I'm super disappointed I didn't let you go to that party. And he goes, right? And walks out of the room. It's their job to try it on. It's our job to notice and push back. But I am lucky. My kids are in a 2-parent home. I work part-time. I have the chance to notice when there's something fishy going on. And I bet that I don't have great sensitivity, meaning that's a medical thing. I bet I'm not catching it all. And still, so many families are in the spot where it is about inventory management. Do I have each kid, and they each have their backpack, and they each got fed? And listen, there have been days in my house where I'm like, why are you people all so cranky? Did we not have lunch? So this isn't only about economic and social stressors, but so many of the families that we get the opportunity to work with, they are not getting to think at the meta level about what's happening with their kids. We have the opportunity to do that. Here's one way that after-school programs really build confidence, competence, and good relationships. Field hockey, I'm the best! We teach kids self-respect and respect for others. That is what is key to confidence. You know what isn't key to confidence? You're the prettiest. You're so smart. That kind of general praise over things, about things over which kids have no control, is not actually confidence building. It may feel warm and fuzzy, and I'm not saying we never do it, but it doesn't build confidence. We only build confidence in children when we praise them over things that they can control. You worked really hard on that project. You've shown great improvement in your math. I like how you really buckle down and try a problem a second time now. I remember when I used to help you with your homework, and if it was too hard after the first time, you'd give up. You've really learned some perseverance. There are 2 important things to know about praise. It works best when it's something a person has control over so that they can do it again. And it works best when it is specific. I see you. I noticed you moved the ball down the field. That might be a literal compliment or a metaphoric compliment, but you made some kind of incremental change. You did that. That's when kids feel the most valued. Ms. Shauna saw me. I spent a day, I work with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Pennsylvania, and I spent a day in a particular center, and I asked a group of kids at the end of the day as we were just hanging out waiting for pickup, what was the greatest thing you heard today? And one of the boys said, Mr. Eric noticed that I didn't hit anybody during basketball. And I said, tell me about that. And he said, well, like we got to the end of basketball, and he's giving everybody high fives as we're cleaning up, and he's like, you didn't lay hands on anybody today, way to go. And I kind of looked at him, and he said, no, I saw those kids getting on your nerves. You held it together, way to go. He said, he was watching. He cares even when I'm being good. He watched me both times. That's really what this kid is saying. He saw me change. He saw me improve. When we teach kids to have respect for themselves, well, when she lays hands on you like that, you say, I don't like that. Please don't do that. When somebody says something to you and you try to address it and it doesn't work, you come and you get an adult because nobody should treat you that way. We're going to use the name, the pronouns, whatever it is that you choose because you are deserving of respect. We teach kids self-respect. When we say no to children, they learn that saying no is a viable option. I want every child in the world to know how to say the word no. No, you don't get to touch me like that. No, I don't want to do that. No, you may not speak to me that way. We have to model that. We teach kids to respect us. They'll get along better in the world if they know how to respect adults. No question. But when we respect them, we build their confidence. Because when you're working with a group of your after-schoolers, whatever their age, you could be the coolest person in the room. If you're showing them respect, not if you're increasing your popularity. And this is something that younger staff sometimes get caught in what my friend Michael Brandwine, who's a big speaker in the camp industry, calls the trap. The reality about popularity trap. And you can teach this to your students, to your younger staff, to say, when you're working with kids, if they want to do something that's against the rules, we're not allowed to go into that room, but can we just go in there anyway? Or when a staff is like, yeah, just come in, don't tell anybody. You're not supposed to have this snack until Friday, but I'm going to give it to you now. Their popularity goes up, for sure. They're not wrong about that. In that moment, their popularity goes up, but their respect goes down. When we teach kids about boundaries and we hold to those boundaries respectfully, we build their confidence. After-school programs are all about this. I was working with a different group of centers in Western Pennsylvania, and they were having trouble with this issue of respect. So in art class, they just did a project in arts and crafts after school where they had the kids make signs. They said, we're going to try an initiative where we hold the door. So they made signs for every door, both sides. Look behind you, hold the door. Look behind you, hold the door. If there's somebody coming, hold the door for them. They tried a look behind you, hold the door for 1 week. When I talked to the staff after that week, they said, the respect people are showing each other improved in all kinds of ways, not just about doors. Oh, you're carrying something heavy. Can I take some of that from you? Oh, hey, do you need something? I'm going into the kitchen to grab something. Can I get you something? That look behind you and hold the door became a philosophy, not just that one example of respect. But that builds kids' confidence. Because then what does that adult that they held the door for say? Hey, thank you. How are you today? Oh, I'm so glad to see you. And it fosters good relationships. What about building competence? We do a lot of helping with homework, but not just helping with homework. There are a lot of ways. Chores exist in every setting that a kid is in. When a kid's on a team, there's some setting up beforehand or some cleaning up afterwards that can be done. All of my kids know they'd best not get into our car at the end of a practice without having thanked their coach, just for their time. Most of their coaches are volunteer, but even if they're not, just thanking them for their time. My kids will tell you, because they've heard me talk about it so much, how underpaid educators and staff are, and youth group advisors, and every adult who works with them. One of my kids said to me recently, why does our society value kids so little that they don't pay these people more? It's a really good question, but in the meantime, it's true. So how do those kind of manners and chores help build competence? I'm fierce on chores in my house. My kids, we have 4 kids in 6 years, and their dad's in the Air Force, so it's often nearly every person for themselves, and so the only way for us to hang together is for everybody to do stuff. One of the things that means is that my kids do big chores. When you turn 7 in my house, you start to do the laundry for the family. When you turn 9, you make everybody's school lunches every night. When you turn 11, you clean the kitchen at the end of dinner. When you turn 13, you're responsible for 2 dinners a week. How did I know that a 7-year-old could do the laundry? This is going back to the beginning of my talk, because when I was 7, I was doing my family's laundry. My 7-year-old can work a tablet and a smartphone and a computer. The washer is none so complicated. When one of my kids was 4, I was in the kitchen. He had a friend over who's playing in the front hall, and I call out to him, hey, Gavri, I need you to come in and run the dishwasher. And he says to his friend, time out. And his friend says, why? And he says, oh, I have to go run the dishwasher. And his friend says, why? And he says, oh, I think my mom doesn't know how. Yes. My kids will complain to me endlessly about the chores that they have to do, which are much harder than all the chores their friends have to do, which is probably true. I'm cool with that. But they brag about it to their friends. when one of my kids, one Sunday morning, I see patients Sunday mornings in my office. I had a babysitter coming over, and she said, Dr. G, can I take the kids to the park? And I said, sure, as soon as they finish their chores. And she says, what chores do you guys have to do? And my son, Oren, who was then 8, who had been standing upright, went, I have to finish the laundry. And I'm all, okay, Quasimodo. And she says, you know how to do the laundry? I have friends in college who don't know how to do the laundry. And he pops back up and he says, aren't they embarrassed? And then he turns to me. I have a YouTube channel where every week I put up a 1-minute, 2-minute video about one particular topic for parents or educators or coaches or college students. And he says, you should put a video on your YouTube channel, Mom, about teaching college students how to do the laundry. And I said, no, sweetheart, you should put a video up. And sure enough, we went to a laundromat a couple of weeks later, and if you search 8-year-old teaches college students to do the laundry, you'll see Oren, he's got like 15,000 views. He thinks it's the coolest thing. When we teach kids to do stuff for themselves, they learn competence. They know that we are expert problem solvers. They know we're good, whether we are or not, at math or at communications or at basketball. We have to teach them how to get better at it, which doesn't mean so much teaching them math or letting them just talk to people alone. It means encouraging them, noticing their incremental change, telling them what we want more of. If I say, I like that A, way to go, then they know they're getting more praise from me if they can do something for a teacher who will value it exactly that same way and give them an A. If I say, I like that perseverance, I like how you've revised that essay even though you're really tired of it, they know how to get more praise from me. It's to revise something and stick with it even when they're really tired of it. We will get more of what we praise. We will get more of what we say about kids, which is why we cringe so much when a parent says, oh, he's so bad. We will get more of whatever it is that we say about kids. When I was in college, college students at that time called home about an average of once a week, usually on Sunday from a payphone when the rates were really low. Right now, college-age students, be they in the college or in the military or anything else, have, on average, 13.1 communications with their parents every week. Every one of which might be wonderful. Might be, here's a picture of the adorable thing the puppy just did. I was thinking about you because I saw that thing, that commercial you like. But it robs adults and kids. It robs adults of the opportunity to prove to these young adults that we believe they're capable of maneuvering in the world on their own. And it robs those students or young recruits or people with their very first job of the chance to go in the world and try something without constant what you ought to do feedback from an expert and see how it goes. We are not giving kids the opportunity to try and fail. I was just talking to someone earlier this morning who said that her husband is all about tracking, cyber tracking their kids. Well, his car is over here, but his phone is over there. Raise your hand if you're grateful your parents didn't know where you or any vehicle you might have been in were when you were that age. Every single one of you is here this morning, employed and breathing. Our kids want to do a lot of things. They all have something they would like to be allowed to do, and there's an adult that is currently saying no. Perhaps appropriately. As you heard, I'm a big fan of the word no. But the reasons that adults are saying no often have to do with fear and guilt, and less to do with if that child is ready. There's a myth in our culture, and it's more prevalent in affluent cultures for sure, but it is prevalent in our culture that it is the duty and responsibility of adults to keep children from all harm. All harm. There's a quote from Jewish religious text that says, better a broken arm than a broken spirit. I offer that for your consideration. The Journal of Child and Family Studies in February of 2013, and I don't read slides, but I'm going to read you this one, says, students who reported having over-controlling parents reported significantly higher levels of depression and less satisfaction with life. Furthermore, the negative effects of helicopter parenting on college students' well-being were largely explained by the perceived violation of students' basic psychologic needs for autonomy and competence. Now, I know that many of you are working with families that you wish would be more involved. But when they get involved, they tend to get involved only to minimize what they perceive as slights or offenses or small harms. Kids need adults. You've talked a lot this week about needing just one caring adult to say, you matter. I see you. You being in the world matters to me. If you're dealing with kids 9 and up who you fear are being bullied or feel less than, I want you to look into the It Gets Better project, which is really valuable. It's all kinds of famous people talking about how this isn't the best time of your life. Stick with it. It does get better. But this opportunity to sit with a child and connect with them, nothing is more valuable. On your table, there are clear aquarium rocks. Would everybody take one? The conference organizers were kind enough to get you guys these because I said, I really want everyone to take this home with them. So put it in your pocket or in your purse, and when you happen on it, I want you to remember a few things. The first is this. Next week, or if you're really, really organized, this weekend when you're unpacking and you're clearing out and you happen on this, think of someone that you know in your profession who should have been at this conference and call them, or text or email. Tell them one really valuable thing you got out of this week and say, I hope you'll join me in Atlanta next year. This was really useful, and I think you'd get a lot out of it. But the other reasons that I wanted you to have this rock is because I want you to remember, for kids that you work with, you're a rock. Now, there are different ways to be a rock. We're going to let kids do the things they want to do. All the things that they want to do that they're trying to get away with, they're going to be able to when they're adults. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. They're going to have these privileges and opportunities. But how do we get them competent and confident and with enough good relationships that they can handle these things? I was giving that talk in Northern California, and at the end of my talk, a woman came up to me and she said, I just have to tell you, you're spending this whole night talking about resilience and the opportunity for people to let kids fail and praise them for what they really try and do as opposed to just who they are and focus on character. And it made me really, well, you improved my memories of my dad. I was like, wow, tell me about that. And she told me this story. She said she'd grown up in a small town in North Dakota on a farm. Her dad was a farmer. Her mom was the principal of the high school in town. So her mom wasn't home that much. She said, we lived in a very, very small home. My siblings and I were really close in age. So when you had a problem, you'd get home after school, you'd go out into the field, sit on the tractor, and talk to Dad. And she said, but he always said, no matter what you told him, the exact same thing. He said, well, that's a pretty fine fix you've gotten yourself into there, kiddo. I'll be interested to see how you get yourself out. She said, it was infuriating. She said, it's become a family joke. My siblings and I now, she said, we'll be at somebody's house for Christmas, and one of the grandkids will run in from the kitchen, and he's gonna spill the. And as a group, we will say, well, that's a pretty fine fix you've gotten yourself into there, kiddo. We'll be interested to see how you get yourself out. She said, but as I was listening to you talk, I realized maybe he was on to something. He cared, but he wouldn't fix it for us. He gave us empathy without intervention. That rock that you are for these kids, sometimes it's the rock they can hide behind, or the rock they can stand on because they need you to lift them up or protect them. But most of the time, they just need it to be a touchstone. Something they can come back to, you're here, you're solid, you care about me. I'm going to try again. You'll be interested to know how it turned out. When I see you on Monday, you're going to want to know. You're going to remember that there was something happening this weekend that I was worried about. You're going to ask me how it went, and you're going to listen to what I tell you. When I'm going through it this weekend, I'll know that you care what's going to happen to me next, that you really want this to work out well for me, but even if it doesn't, you'll still be able to hear me. That you might give me a suggestion about what to do, but I kind of hope you won't. I really just want to know that you care. Empathy without intervention. That teaches resilience. I know that you're going to fail. When we talk to kids about what might go wrong, we need to use when language, not if language. When you do poorly in a class, when you have an interaction with somebody who doesn't like you, when you try out for something and don't make it, when you have to talk to a police officer, not if. If means if you're in that spot, we both know you screwed up and you failed and I'm going to be disappointed. When it happens, I'm going to be looking to see how you handle yourself. That's what matters. That's what we have to teach kids that will build their confidence and their competence and their good relationships. Those are the skills they need. The skills that you are perfectly placed to give them. Every one of your interactions with kids will not build these. We too are in the position of needing to do some inventory management and some classroom management. But if 10% of the time, if 1 or 2 times in the course of a school year with each of the students that you touch, you can have a moment where you build their confidence in a meaningful way, or build their competence at something and notice it out loud to them. Encourage their resilience by showing them empathy and having faith in their ability to come up with an idea. Those are the ways that you will give these kids the skills they need to find and make their own happiness. This is our chance. I hear a lot about kids today. Socrates has an amazing quote about kids today and how they don't respect their elders, and they don't rise when older people come into the room, and they just want to eat up all the food and play and not pay any attention to what they're supposed to be learning. This is not a new issue, people. Socrates. What's new is that we're having conversations like this. Is that you may say, hey, let your math homework sit for a minute. Let's talk about perseverance. Hey, let's stop the basketball game for 2 minutes, put 2 minutes on the clock, and talk about sportsmanship and respect and how much I respect you guys for the way you just handled that thing that went well. Or I want you guys to tell me another way we could solve this problem that's happening right here. Because I care about you guys, and I know that you're good problem solvers. Let's ask kids to take out the garbage. Because they can, and it will make the world a better place. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I gotta say, in my house, when I stop talking, I do not get a theme song. That's awesome. I'm not able to take questions here because we want to be respectful of everyone's time and schedule. I am doing a workshop in, I think, the De La Salle room about talking to kids about difficult topics. And so I hope if you have a question, you will find me there. And if you go to this page I created, askdrg.com/join, you will find a private page for NAA for this conference and attendees where my notes will be and some other resources. Thanks, everyone.